Title: The Forest Man. "What the hell?" I muttered. Roy fired. The blast echoed through the woods. The creature let out a piercing, inhuman scream. Episode 1. The Cabin in the Woods. My name is Ricardo Hernandez. I was 32 years old in the fall of 1994, and until then, I lived a simple life. I worked as a mechanic in a small town tucked away in the Midwest. One of those places where everyone knows everyone, and secrets are few, or at least, they're supposed to be. I never paid much mind to ghost stories or local legends. That kind of thing was for kids and bored old men, not someone like me. I believed in engines, steel, and grease things I could see, smell, and fix. But one weekend changed all of that forever. It was the first Friday in September. The leaves had just begun to turn, and the air was cooler, crisp enough to remind you that summer was gone. That morning, I got a call from my friend Roy. He owned a cabin out in the woods, about an hour outside of town, and he needed help fixing his generator again. Roy was always working on something, fixing it, breaking it, then fixing it again. I tossed a few tools into my truck and hit the road. The drive was peaceful, one of those routes that cuts through nothing but farmland and winding forest roads. I remember rolling the windows down, letting the breeze carry in the scent of pine and earth. For a while, it felt like the world was calm, quiet, safe. When I pulled up to Roy's cabin, he was out front chopping wood, his sleeves rolled up, an axe flashing in the fading afternoon sun. "Jax," he shouted with a grin, waving the axe one-handed. "Glad you made it. Wouldn't miss it," I called back, stepping out of the truck, that generator ready for me. He chuckled and led me around back. The cabin was rustic but cozy, nestled in a clearing with thick woods pressing in on all sides. The trees looked older than time, their branches arching like twisted fingers. Roy had filled the place with old junk broken radios, rusted saw blades, vintage signs. It gave the place character, even if it was a little messy. The generator was making a low grinding noise, coughing like it had smoke in its lungs. As I tinkered with it, Roy leaned against a tree and started talking. "You ever hear of the Forest Man?" he asked casually. I glanced over. "You mean like Bigfoot?" "Not exactly. Local legend. Says there's something out there in these woods. Real tall, real fast. Not human." I laughed. "Roy, come on. You drinking your oil again?" He shrugged, but didn't laugh. "Old-timers say it's taken people, hikers, hunters, even a kid once. Never found the bodies." There was a moment of silence. The generator sputtered, then hummed to life. We spent the rest of the afternoon working and joking, but something about that story clung to me like a shadow. That night, after dinner and a couple of beers, Roy offered for me to stay the night. I didn't argue. The sun had gone down, and the woods outside were pitch black, the kind of dark that eats light. It was just past midnight when we heard the first noise. A branch snapped loud. Close. Roy sat up, alert. I turned down the radio. Then came another snap, and another. Footsteps, not the light shuffle of a deer. These were heavy, deliberate, human, or something like it. I grabbed my flashlight. Roy grabbed his shotgun. We stepped out onto the porch. The air had turned still and cold. Every sound was amplified, like the forest was holding its breath. I scanned the tree line with the flashlight. Probably just a bear, I muttered, more to convince myself than Roy. But then, we saw it. It stood at the edge of the clearing, half hidden by shadow, humanoid, tall. Too tall. Its limbs were too long. Its stance wrong. And its eyes, they glowed. Faint and unnatural, reflecting the flashlight like cold fire. "What the hell?" I whispered. Roy raised his shotgun and fired. The sound cracked through the night like a whip. The creature screamed, high-pitched, guttural, something no living thing should ever sound like, and bolted into the forest with inhuman speed. Roy and I stared at each other, breathless. "Did you hit it?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I don't know," he said, still aiming at the trees. "But whatever it is, it's not happy." We ran back into the cabin and locked every door and window. Roy kept the shotgun across his lap. I sat by the door, flashlight in hand. We didn't sleep, not a single minute. To be continued. Episode 2. What watches in the dark? Roy and I didn't sleep that night. Not really. We just sat there, backs pressed against opposite walls of the cabin, eyes fixed on the windows. The shotgun lay across Roy's lap like it was the only thing keeping him sane. I held the flashlight in both hands, the beam trembling as much as my fingers. The woods outside were silent now. No wind, no crickets, no owls, just silence, deep and unnatural. The kind of silence that doesn't just mean something isn't there. It means something is. The moment the sky began to lighten, we both exhaled like we had been holding our breath all night without realizing it. I opened the door cautiously and stepped outside. Dew clung to the grass. A low mist hugged the ground like a warning. Everything looked normal. Too normal. We found tracks. Huge ones. They circled the cabin twice. Deep. Uneven. Almost like someone had been dragging a heavy limb. But the shape of the prints, no animal I knew had feet like that. Long toes, splayed out, each print nearly twice the size of mine. Whatever it was, Roy muttered. It wasn't passing through. It was watching. We followed the tracks for about 50 feet into the trees. Then, they just stopped. No sign of retreat. No broken branches. No scuff marks. Just nothing like the thing had vanished into thin air. Roy looked pale. "You think it was waiting for us to come outside?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to think about that. We went back to the cabin and spent the rest of the day reinforcing it. Moved furniture against doors. Boarded the windows. We filled a few jars with gasoline from the backup generator tank and made a makeshift Molotov, just in case. I was ready to leave, to be honest. But Roy, he wasn't. "I want to know what it is," he told me. "If we run now, we'll just live in fear forever." "I'm staying." I should have tried harder to convince him. Should have told him no story was worth this. But I didn't. I stayed too. That night, we didn't sleep either. We just sat in the dark, listening. At first, nothing. But then, sometime past midnight, we heard it again. First, the sound of something brushing against the outer wall light, like a branch swaying. But there was no wind. Then came the steps, slow, measured, crunching on gravel. We both stood. Then came the whisper. Not a word, not even a language, just a sound, dry, slithering, like wine through dead leaves. But it wasn't the wind. It was circling the cabin. Then, a knock. Just one. A single, deliberate tap at the front door. Almost polite. We stood frozen. Then another knock. Louder this time. Roy raised the shotgun. I crept toward the window beside the door. Slowly, I peeled the curtain back by an inch and saw it, just standing there. Its head nearly touched the roof of the porch. Its arms hung low and slack, skin pale like smoke, stretched too tightly over its frame. It wasn't breathing, wasn't swaying. It was perfectly still, but its eyes were locked on the door. And then, it smiled. Not with lips. It didn't have lips. Just a slit that widened, stretched. That was when I realized it wasn't smiling at the door. It was smiling at me. I gasped and stumbled backward. Roy didn't hesitate. He opened the front window just enough to slide the barrel of the shotgun through and fired. The blast lit up the entire porch. The thing screamed. I've heard animals cry out. I've heard dying men scream. But this was something else. Something wrong. It dropped to all fours and bounded off into the trees with terrifying speed. We didn't chase it. We just sealed the cabin tighter and waited for the sun. When dawn broke, we found blood, if you could call it that. It was thick, dark, almost tar-like, with a sour chemical smell. It burned the grass where it had dripped. I looked at Roy. You hit it. He nodded slowly. But we didn't stop it. We agreed then. We'd go back to town. We packed. We loaded up. And that's when we saw the message, scratched deep into the wooden siding of the cabin. Letters gouged in with something sharp and deliberate. Stay. To be continued. Episode 3. The Vanishing Point. Roy and I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the word carved into the cabin wall. Stay. It wasn't just a warning, it felt like a command. Like whatever was out there thought this place belonged to it. And now, so did we. We didn't speak much on the drive back to town. The road out of the woods felt longer than it should have, as if the trees themselves were reluctant to let us go. When we finally saw the first gas station on the outskirts of town, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Roy dropped me off at my place, then drove home without saying much more than, "You still have that flashlight?" I nodded. He didn't smile, just pulled away. I went inside and locked everything, showered twice, still felt dirty. Sleep came hard. And when it did, it brought with it the sound, the whispering from the forest. But now, it was in my bedroom, circling my bed, breathing beside my ear. I woke up screaming. A week passed. Roy didn't return my calls. I went by his place. Nobody answered. His truck wasn't there. The blinds were drawn. I knocked, waited. Nothing. I started asking around town. Nobody had seen him. I called the sheriff's office. They said Roy never checked back in after his time at the cabin, said he was still officially on leave. I went back the next day, with my own truck, with my own shotgun. The woods felt wrong the moment I passed mile marker 7. The air was thicker, quieter. Even the insects didn't seem to hum anymore. The cabin looked the same but emptier, like it had been drained of something. Roy's truck was still there, parked at an angle like he'd pulled in fast. The door was ajar. Inside, everything was untouched. The shotgun was gone. Roy's duffel still sat in the corner. There were muddy footprints on the floor, just one set. Big, too big. They stopped in the middle of the living room and never continued, like Roy had stood there and vanished. I called out for him, waited, and then I heard something, not from outside, from under the floorboards. I knelt and pressed my ear down. Silence. Then a thud, followed by a low, drawn-out asterisk dragging asterisk sound, like something being pulled across wood. I backed away. Then the whispering started again. Low. Wrong. My name. Rai Dakar. Do. It was under the floor. I ran outside, slammed the door, and sprinted to the truck. I drove fast. Didn't care about the rocks kicking up or the branches scratching the side panels. Just wanted to put as much distance between me and that place as possible. I made it back to town and went straight to Sheriff Wilson. "You have to send someone up there," I told him. "Roy's missing, and there's something in that cabin." He gave me a long look, the kind older men give when they know more than they let on. "We've heard stories from up there before," he finally said. "Strange ones, about that part of the forest. People getting turned around, seeing things. Some folks don't come back. So you know," I said. He nodded. "But we don't talk about it." He did send a couple of deputies to check the site the next day. They found the cabin. They found Roy's truck. But no Roy. No footprints. No scratches. No blood. Even the word stay was gone. Scrubbed clean, as if it had never been carved there at all. But I knew better. And that night, when I came home, there was a package on my porch, wrapped in old brown paper. No address, no postage, just my name, written in shaky black marker. Inside, a single Polaroid photo of Roy, standing deep in the woods, eyes wide, mouth open, like he was screaming. Behind him, something huge, blurred, wrong, and at the bottom of the photo, scratched into the surface like claw marks. Too late. To be continued. Episode 4. Beneath the roots. I stared at the Polaroid until my hands went numb. Roy's face, his wide eyes, that gaping, silent scream was burned into my brain. But it was the thing behind him that froze my blood, blurred by motion, distorted by darkness, but undeniably massive, towering, wrong. It wasn't just hunting, it was playing, and now it had my name. I took the photo to the sheriff's office the next morning. Wilson looked at it for a long time, but said nothing. "This is a threat," I told him. "It knows where I live." He nodded, slowly. "I believe you." That surprised me. "What do we do?" I asked. "We don't," he said quietly. "You leave it alone. You don't go back. But Roy, if you go back in those woods, Ricardo, you won't come out." He slid the photo back across the table. "This thing, whatever it is, it's not just a creature. It's something old, maybe older than the forest itself." I left without another word. That night, I stayed up watching the trees outside my window. Nothing moved. No wind. No sound. Just the weight of something waiting. By the next morning, I'd made my decision. If the sheriff wasn't going to help, I'd find answers myself. So I drove to the county archives. Most people don't know this, but old forestry records are full of stories missing persons, strange sightings, ranger notes that were never meant to go public. I spent hours digging through dusty file boxes, and that's when I found it. An incident report from 1979. 2 rangers' last names, Holloway and Brooks, went to investigate reports of missing campers near the same woods. Only one came back. Holloway. He refused to speak for years. Ended up in a mental hospital 3 towns over. According to the file, when he was finally able to talk, he just said 3 words. Under the ground. That night, I dreamed of roots black, gnarled tendrils that twisted like fingers, reaching up from beneath the earth to drag me down. I woke up gasping. My phone buzzed. "No caller ID," I answered. Static. Then, whispering. My name. Twice. Then the line went dead. I didn't go back to sleep. The next day, I found myself driving. I didn't even decide to. It was like something was pulling me. I ended up near the trailhead outside the woods, the same one Roy and I had used weeks ago. I sat in the truck for 10 minutes. Then I stepped out. The moment I crossed the tree line, everything changed. It was like stepping into a different world. Sound dulled, light dimmed, the air grew thick. I walked until I found the clearing. The cabin was still there, but it wasn't right. The wood looked warped, darker, wetter, like it was breathing. I went inside. It was empty, dustless, silent. I stepped over to the corner where Roy's bag had once been. Gone. Even the scratch on the wall was gone. But the floor, it was cold. Too cold. I knelt and pressed my palm against the boards, and that's when I heard it. Knocking. From beneath. Slow. Rhythmic. Measured. Then the sound of scraping. Like something with claws. Inching along just under the surface. I backed away, but I couldn't stop staring. Because now, I could hear breathing. Shallow. Wet. Almost curious. I ran. Out the door. Through the trees. But the woods weren't the same. They'd changed. Paths I remembered were gone. Trees seemed to shift as I moved. I wasn't walking through a forest anymore. I was walking through it. And it was watching. Waiting. I turned and ran. Branches whipped at my face. My legs burned. And then silence. I burst through the tree line. Back into the world of sound and air and sky. I collapsed by my truck, panting, and carved into the dirt beside my tire 3 letters. Run. To be continued. Episode 5. They never leave. I didn't sleep after I saw that word in the dirt. Run. It wasn't a warning. It was a message from the same thing that had taken Roy, the same thing that haunted those woods, watched from beneath the roots, and it knew I was back. I drove home, half aware of the road, every second expecting something to crawl up from the back seat. The trees outside the window blurred into shadows. My hands never left the wheel. When I finally got home, it was just after 3 a.m. I found muddy footprints on my front porch. Not human. Splayed. Long. Wet. I stepped inside. Slowly. Shotgun raised. Nothing was broken. Nothing stolen. But I could feel it. It had been here. It was still here. I checked every room. Every corner. Even the crawl space under the house. Empty. But in the bathroom mirror, someone or something had wiped a circle through the steam, and inside that circle, written in the moisture, under, that word followed me into my dreams. That night, I saw Roy again. He was in the woods, naked and covered in mud. His eyes were wide, glassy, and wrong. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Then the trees behind him moved, and something with too many arms wrapped around him and pulled him underground. I woke up screaming. The next morning, I called the old state hospital 3 towns over. I needed to speak to Holloway the Ranger from 1979, the only one who ever came back. To my surprise, they said he was alive. Barely. Living in the long-term ward. No family. No visitors. I drove out that afternoon. The place looked like it belonged in a horror story red brick. Overgrown fences. Flickering hallway lights. The kind of place where time forgets people. When I asked to see Holloway, the nurse looked surprised. He hasn't spoken in years. I'll take my chances, I said. She led me to a small room with a barred window. There he was, grey hair, thin frame, sitting motionless in a chair. Mr. Holloway, I asked. Nothing. My name's Ricardo. I think I saw the same thing you did. Near mile marker 7, his eyes moved. Just barely. Brooks, he rasped. It was the first word out of his mouth in decades. I'm sorry, I asked. They took Brooks. Under the roots, said his name. They always say the name. He looked at me for the first time. They have yours now. I froze. They won't stop. They never leave the forest, but they send things out. Little things, shadows, whispers. And once you hear them, he leaned forward, eyes burning. You belong to them. Then he screamed. It took 3 nurses to restrain him. I left before they asked questions. That night, I packed a bag food, batteries, flares, the shotgun, my old compass, and wrote a note. If I didn't come back, someone needed to know where I'd gone. And why? Because I was going back, not just to find Roy, but to find it. Whatever lived beneath that forest, it knew me now. And I needed to know it. 2. To be continued. Episode 6. The Descent. It was still dark when I returned to the forest. I parked my truck half a mile from the trailhead and made the rest of the journey on foot. No flashlight, just moonlight and memory. Every branch creak made me flinch. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper, but I didn't stop. Somewhere in those woods, Roy was waiting, or whatever was left of him. The trees grew denser the deeper I went. The path that once led straight to the cabin now twisted strangely, forcing me off course. It wasn't natural. It was as if the forest was reshaping itself trying to confuse me. But I had something it didn't expect. I had Holloway's map. The old ranger's drawings were crude, hand-sketched onto yellowing paper, but it wasn't a trail map. It was deeper, stranger. He'd marked spots with names like Whisper Root, Dead Tree Hollow, the Wet Mouth. One was circled in red, asterisk, asterisk, the sink, asterisk, asterisk. I followed the map, checking my compass constantly. The deeper I went, the colder it got. Then, the smell hit me. Rot. Mold. Something sour and wet. I pushed through a curtain of vines and found it. The sink. A perfectly round hole in the earth. Maybe 20 feet wide. Ringed with roots and moss-covered stone. No leaves dared fall into it. No birds sang above it. The air was dead here. I peered inside. It wasn't just a hole. It was a tunnel sloping downward into darkness, so thick it felt alive. I fired a flare and dropped it in. It spiraled, casting red light against wet rock, until it vanished into black. I strapped on my headlamp and began my descent. The air inside was thick and damp, like the breath of something sleeping. As I climbed deeper, I saw carvings on the tunnel walls, symbols, hands, faces, all twisted in agony. Some looked recent. Some looked asterisk, ancient asterisk. My flashlight flickered. The ground beneath me pulsed not an earthquake, more like a slow heartbeat. And then I heard the voice again. My name, but not from ahead, from behind. I turned, raised the shotgun. Nothing. Just the tunnel, silent, watching. I pressed on. The deeper I went, the louder it got. Whispers, echoes, screams that faded into sobs. I felt them crawling into my head. Then I saw him, Roy, sitting against the wall, eyes open, mouth slack, covered in mud and scratches. Roy. I ran to him. He didn't move. I grabbed his shoulder. He blinked, and then he screamed. The sound was raw, not from his throat, but from his soul. I backed away. He looked at me, but his eyes were wrong, like he was looking asterisk through asterisk me. They showed me, he said, what's under us, what's always been here. I tried to pull him up, but he resisted. You can't save me. Jax, he whispered. But maybe you can stop it. Stop asterisk what asterisk? I asked. He smiled. And then his eyes rolled back. He slumped forward. Gone. Something stirred deeper in the tunnel. Something massive. Coming closer. I grabbed Roy's bag and ran. Up the tunnel. Heart hammering. Lights dying. I slipped twice. Scraped my knee. Dropped the shotgun. Kept going. As I reached the surface, I turned for one last look and saw a shape. Vast. Fleshy. Moving beneath the earth like a serpent made of roots and skin. I didn't stop running until I reached my truck. In Roy's bag, I found a notebook. Only 3 words were written inside, over and over. It's not dead. Asterisk, asterisk. And it says, to be continued. Episode 7. The Hollow Man. The drive back from the forest was a blur. I don't remember the turns. I don't remember the sunrise. All I remember is gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles bled, and the constant weight of that notebook on the seat beside me. Roy's notebook. 3 words, scrawled across every page in shaking ink. It's not dead. Asterisk, asterisk. I didn't go home. I didn't trust home anymore. Instead, I parked behind an old diner on the edge of town and sat there for hours, staring at the trees beyond the highway like they might blink. Eventually, I opened the notebook again. I flipped past the repetitions, pages and pages of the same phrase until I reached the back cover. There, written in a steadier hand, was something different. Holloway was right. They live beneath. The land drinks memory. It wants stories. It wants names. It makes you forget, so it can feed. Underneath that, a diagram, not a map. A asterisk shape, asterisk, concentric circles, spiraling inward like a fingerprint or a whirlpool, arrows pointing toward the center. At the core, a single word, asterisk, asterisk mouth, asterisk, asterisk. I felt sick. Later that afternoon, I returned to the hospital. I had to see Holloway again, but the nurse at the front desk just shook her head. He's gone. What do you mean? I asked. Discharged, she offered, but her voice lacked conviction. I pressed harder. Finally, she leaned in and whispered, he wasn't on the morning rounds. Security footage shows him walking out the side entrance at 7 a.m. by himself. She nodded. No one's seen him since. I left before I said something I'd regret, but my gut told me the truth. He didn't walk out. Asterisk. It asterisk took him back. I spent the rest of the day searching the woods around town, but it was like the forest had pulled its curtain tight. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the tunnel, the symbols on the walls, the thing that slithered beneath the stone, and Roy's face, his voice whispering, you can't save me, but maybe you can stop it. But how? How do you stop something older than memory? Something that lives beneath names and feeds on fear? I needed help. Real help. So I drove to Birmingham. To the university. I needed an expert in folklore. Someone who knew the old stories. The ones people stopped telling for a reason. That's when I met Professor Ezra Lang. Grey-bearded, thin, voice like sandpaper. He listened to everything I said without blinking. When I finished, he poured 2 glasses of whiskey and said, you're not the first. He went to a dusty file cabinet and pulled out a manila folder labeled asterisk, asterisk, black root cases, asterisk, asterisk. Inside were dozens of newspaper clippings, police sketches, transcribed journal pages, disappearing hikers, sketches of a bone-skinned giant, references to something called the Hollow Man. Lang slid the folder toward me. These cases go back centuries. Different names. Same pattern. Same ground. And the mouth? I asked. He nodded gravely. Some cultures called it an eye. Others a gate. But they all agree on one thing. It doesn't open unless you feed it. Feed it what? Lang stared at me. Stories, pain, identity. Then he tapped the center of the diagram in Roy's notebook. Or blood. That night, I slept in my truck. I dreamed of a field of bones and a voice impossibly deep, whispering from beneath the soil. It didn't say my name this time. It said one word. Asterisk, asterisk, soon. Asterisk, asterisk. And said was to be continued. Episode 8. The mouth opens. I didn't sleep the next night. Not because I didn't try. Because I wasn't allowed. Every time I closed my eyes, the forest found me. Roots coiling through my thoughts. Voices whispering inside my chest. The image of Roy screaming in silence. Over and over again. When I opened my eyes just before dawn, there was something on my windshield. A single dead bird. Its beak pressed against the glass like it had flown straight into the truck at full speed. Its eyes were gone, not torn, not eaten, just gone. Something was accelerating. Later that morning, I returned to Professor Lang. I laid the photo of Roy on his desk. The symbols, the tunnel, the whispers, the notebook. He listened and then said, "You've already gone too far." "What do you mean?" "You went into the tunnel. You heard your name. You saw the shape beneath. That's all it needs." "Needs for what?" He looked down. "To open the mouth." He walked to his bookshelf, pulled a thick leather-bound tome, and flipped through until he landed on an old woodcut. It showed a man standing on the edge of a pit, surrounded by branches shaped like antlers. Beneath him, a creature too large, too wrong, rising out of the earth. Lang read from the text. "The Hollow Man comes not to feed, but to invite the feast. He offers memory, the final seed, and opens the mouth beneath the beast." What the hell does that mean? Lang met my eyes. "It means you're the invitation." I laughed, but it came out hollow. He handed me a pendant, small, cold iron etched with a knotwork symbol. "Worn by the old wardens," he said, "before they vanished." That night, I drove back toward the forest. I wasn't planning to go in. I just needed to see it one last time to decide if I was ready to fight something I didn't understand. I stopped at the same trailhead, got out, walked 10 steps into the dark, and the world shifted. Just like before, the light dimmed, the birds fell silent, and then I heard it. No. Asterisk felt asterisk it. Asterisk, asterisk, the earth exhaling. Asterisk, asterisk. I turned around. The path was gone. I was surrounded by trees that hadn't been there seconds ago. Black bark, no leaves, no sky. I took a step, and the ground pulsed. Then it opened. Just ahead, the dirt split like torn skin, revealing that same tunnel. The one I'd crawled through before, but it had grown. Wider, deeper, alive. A low groan came from inside, like something waking up. Something asterisk hungry, asterisk. The mouth had opened, and it had opened asterisk for me. Asterisk. I should have run, but I couldn't, because down in that blackness, something called to me. A voice I couldn't ignore. It wasn't Roy. It wasn't Holloway. It was mine. And said was to be continued. Episode 9. The name it took. I don't remember crawling into the tunnel. I only remember waking up inside it. The walls pulsed around me, slick and warm like the inside of a throat. My flashlight barely worked. The beam flickered as if it were afraid. Each step echoed like a breath asterisk, not mine asterisk. And the farther I went, the less gravity felt like my own. My name didn't feel like mine either. I said it out loud once, just to anchor myself. Ricardo, and something whispered it back, mocking me. Further down, I found the first skeleton. It was fused into the wall ribs, twisted into roots. Skull, half swallowed by black moss, and carved into the stone next to it. Asterisk, asterisk, Holloway, asterisk, asterisk. Not written, etched, like a mark of ownership. The tunnel widened into a chamber. At the center, standing perfectly still, was Roy. But he wasn't Roy anymore. His eyes were empty. His skin stretched. His face, it was smiling. Not with joy, but with asterisk submission, asterisk. He turned to me slowly, bones cracking. I gave it my name, he said. Now I don't have to remember anymore. What does that mean? I asked. Roy's head tilted. It takes your name first, then your face, then everything else. I raised the shotgun. He didn't flinch. You're next. Jax, he said calmly. You heard it. You felt it. You asterisk carried asterisk it. You invited it. I backed away, but the chamber pulsed again, and from the shadows, it emerged. Asterisk, asterisk, the hollow man. Asterisk, asterisk, 10 feet tall. Skin like bark stretched over bone. No eyes, just a blank. Concave face like a broken mask. Its chest opened like a mouth. Inside, hundreds of names, whispering. And mine was there, being spoken, being asterisk fed, asterisk. I screamed and fired. The flare lit up the chamber, and for a second, the name stopped. It reeled just slightly, but didn't fall. Roy lunged at me, inhuman now, and I struck him with the butt of the gun. He collapsed, hissing in some other voice. I ran, up the tunnel, through the roots. The forest tried to close around me, but I was faster, fueled by terror, and somehow I made it out, but not before I heard it call after me. Not Ricardo, not Jax, just silence. And then, asterisk, asterisk, mine, asterisk, asterisk. And Sabin Sayinwas. I drove until the gaslight came on, parked at a truck stop, cried for the first time in years. When I looked in the rearview mirror, my reflection blinked a moment too late. And Sabin Sayinwas. To be continued. Episode 10. What it leaves behind. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Every mirror reflected something a second too slow. My name felt like a coat I'd borrowed. The air around me was never still. Always shifting. Always whispering. It was inside me now. I knew that. But I had one last thing to do. I drove back to the university. Back to Professor Lang. When he opened the door, he didn't look surprised to see me. Just tired. It marked you, he said. I know. You can't kill it. I'm not here to kill it. Lang led me inside. We sat in silence for a while. Then I showed him Roy's notebook, the spiral, the word in the center, mouth. I think there's a way to close it, I said. Lang didn't answer, but I could see it in his eyes. He'd hoped I was wrong. I go back. I go deep. And I give it something it can't digest. Lang raised a brow. Like what? I looked him dead in the eye. Me. And said in Sayinwas. The next night, I left everything behind. Phone, wallet, keys. Only took the pendant Lang gave me. Roy's notebook, and a vial of my own blood sealed in glass. Wrapped in salt-soaked cloth, I walked into the woods one last time. The forest let me in this time. No resistance. Like it had been waiting. The tunnel opened without sound. I entered. The walls breathed around me. The voices whispered louder than ever. Every name I'd ever known, teachers, friends, lost lovers, they were all here, repeating, feeding it, and somewhere beneath them all, mine. I reached the chamber. The hollow man was waiting. It stepped back as I entered. I held up the vial. My name, I whispered, but you don't get to keep it. Then I smashed the glass. The chamber howled. Roots pulled inward. The earth shook. The hollow man screamed not from pain, but hunger, It had bitten something it couldn't swallow. My blood, my name, willingly given, not stolen. The spiral burned on the floor, and then it collapsed. The mouth closed. The voices stopped, and so did I. And said in Salimas, they found me 3 days later, curled at the edge of the forest, dehydrated, covered in mud and moss. I didn't speak for weeks, but I remembered. I remember everything. Now I live quiet, far from woods, far from silence, and every morning I say my name out loud. Ricardo Hernandez. Ricardo Hernandez. Ricardo Hernandez. Because if I ever forget, even for a second, it'll come back, and this time, asterisk, it won't ask. Asterisk, end.